Frank Figliuzzi, FBI Assistant Director, retired, MSNBC national security expert. Of course, his best-selling book, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers. And last week, your partner in crime, Glenn Kirshner, was on. I call him your partner in crime, like you guys should tour, like the
Yeah,
Frank and
more like
Glenn
partner in cruise, I think is what you mean.
partner in cruise. That's even better.
Yeah.
Look, you're Frank. I'm Dean. We just need a Sammy, and we could have Glenn as Sammy. Tell
Eh,
him change his name to
I hadn't
Sammy.
even,
So
I
it's
hadn't even thought about
Sinatra,
that. The new Rat
right?
Pack.
Dean Martin, and the new Rat Pack. I'm half Italian. I can be Dean Martin. I'm actually loosely named after Dean Martin because my dad wanted a traditional Arabic name, Salahuddin. My mom's Sicilian. She wanted Dino, so they compromised on Dean, and because they knew Dean Martin, it seemed nice. My mom also was angling for a waspy name because she's born here and my dad wasn't. And she knew with her immigrant parents from Sicily and stuff how very ethnic names are a challenge. But Dean was waspy, so that's where I got it.
I got it. Yeah, I just want to know if Dean Martin really had iced tea in his glass when he was out there performing. I've heard that rumor, but I don't know.
And that's something many people have heard over the years. So, Frank, let's talk about the sad and tragic news that happened on Saturday. You know, the reaction to really a horrific shooting, a man who appeared to be hunting for Democrats from what we've seen. But what was your reaction, and what have you learned now that you can share with us over these last few days?
Yeah, so first, my reaction, as with many Americans with a heart, was profound sadness and grief that this is where we are right now, that people who dedicate their lives to public service, being elected officials, one at least who has a stellar reputation of reaching across the aisle and is now dead. The other thing is we learn more seemingly every day, and we'll certainly learn more if this goes to trial. I got to start out with this. First, I was surprised that he was found alive. I really
I was
thought
going to ask you about that.
that he would do himself in, that he had accomplished his mission. I think he's going to go down as a cause killer, a true believer in whatever his cause was, as unclear or clear as that may become. The other thing, just random thoughts. Boy, that woman who saw him in the field and did the right thing and notified the police, fantastic. Because it looks like the police were about to leave that area, is what I'm hearing. The other thing in terms of police work here is the astounding discovery that he had visited two other potential target homes in between these shootings, and even reportedly encountered a police officer who was not certain if he was the real thing or not. But the shootout that occurred at the last home, I think, saved lives. No, the police didn't get him, but the fact that he was disrupted and he couldn't use his car anymore, I think actually saved lives. Now, we can talk more, Dean, about the reaction publicly and the reaction politically to this, which I think is gravely disturbing as well.
So some of it has been, right? I mean, I played some of the good was Tim Walz earlier. So I want to ask you certain facts that jumped out and just get your reaction about it. One is, so we read the story of this gunman and he's struggling financially. That's what it seems like. Yet he got the car, I guess it was his wife's car, but it put lights on it and a license plate, and he got the high-tech outfit and a badge of a cop, and he had five different guns and thousands of dollars in cash in the car. Can you help us make sense of that and the fact that is there no one else involved in this?
Yeah, it's quite possible that while people may have suspected perhaps that he was kind of venturing into dangerous territory, it's quite possible that no one knew exactly that he had this plan. In fact, he left a note reportedly again for his family. I love you. Something like Dad went to war today or something like this. Justice references. I'm sorry for doing this. So he had planned this. We've heard from various media reports for up to a year. So this
Mm-hmm.
notion that people just snap, I have to emphasize, that's not accurate. This was bubbling and boiling for up to a year or more. With regard to purchasing all the gear and stuff, yes, we know he had a reportedly struggling security firm. Not sure it ever got off the ground or really succeeded. But you've hit something that's got to be emphasized, which is there's a lot more going on in the lives of killers like this than meets the eye. And it is human nature for us to want to assign accountability, responsibility, and motive. We want to apply logic to lunacy. I've used that phrase over and over again in my career. And it's a mistake to try and do that because whether you're talking about terrorists or spree murderers, which he is, there's
Right.
something else very disturbed going on in their lives, whether it's financial difficulties, never getting anything off the ground, not being understood, searching for meaning. And all of that coalesces and causes you to act out against whatever you ideology you've got in your head.
So is it unfair to say, because tell me about you've seen something different. The targets on the list were Democrats, I believe exclusively, from what I've seen. If I'm missing some names, let me know. And there were pro-choice activists. He was, he liked Trump. I'm not saying he committed this action for Trump per se, but he liked Trump. He went to Trump rallies. According to his roommate, he voted for Donald Trump. He was very conservative religiously. His roommate said that he called abortion murder. And it seems like you have to divorce common sense from saying there's some connection to this right-wing view that when you're hunting Democrats, and that's what it seemed like he was doing, and surveilling Democrats, that there's some political motivation involved in this.
Yeah. So having said the really important caveat that there's always something else going on in a deranged person's mind than just
Sure.
political motivation, we've got to call it like we see it. And the available evidence, at least right now, is that indeed he had it in for Democrats and Democratic causes. According to his roommate, he claims that the guy voted for Trump and would get angry if he was mistaken for a Democrat. The list of targets in his vehicle reportedly included abortion, pro-choice entities, abortion providers, and Democrats. So I think when I said earlier that I'm really disgusted by the response to this, it's the fact that as a society, it now seems that the very first thing we do when a tragedy like this happens is try to cover it up with disinformation and misinformation. And that's what I've seen going on the far right, whether it's United States Senator Lee
Mm-hmm.
posting and then more recently taking down what seems to be sick humor about this, poking at Democrats, filled with disinformation about what this is about. That has to stop, and that has to stop. Only that will come from the top, Dean. What we should have is a president who lands on the ground there and condemns it from the ground and says this can't happen anymore. But that's not what we really saw. We saw the White House issue a statement on the president's behalf. And we saw a president who said, when asked, "Are you going to call the governor?" Saying, "No, no, no, probably not," and then ranting about how he hates the governor.
Yep.
That's where we are in a society right now, and that's the sign of an ailing society.
And I'm talking with Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, I wanted to play, you said from the top. I want to play the son of the top, Donald Trump Jr., on News Nation, a short clip from yesterday. And listen to what he says. I mean, he goes from at first asking a question to saying something definitive that's very worrisome, and it's factually incorrect. Here's clip number 4.
I would love to see all of that turn down, but I think I'm seeing it come from the left. Everyone talks about Minnesota, but they don't talk about the guy seems to be a leftist. It's a Minnesota politician or guy who was appointed by the Democrat governor, vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Tim Waltz. The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Waltz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
I'm not sure about that, by the way. From what I've seen, I think he voted for your dad and things like that. From what I've seen,
believe that when I see it, but
That's just a lie. The only time that we know, and I went through it earlier, that the time he registered to vote in Oklahoma, he was a Republican. He moved to Minnesota, you don't have to register by party affiliation. He was a conservative. He was a Trump supporter. I'm not saying he did this for the Trump agenda. I'm saying he had a political agenda, and I think it showed up in violence. But listen to the son of the top leader in America going on news and on social media, the same thing. And Elon Musk's platform being used, the same thing. He's a Democrat. They actually believe that, as opposed to saying there's no place for this violence, and we might have to look inside, and there's no place. If you like Donald Trump, we don't want zero violence. Instead of that, in a way, they're doing whataboutisms or lies, which seems implicitly to be arguably supportive of this. That's my bigger concern.
Yeah, when you run from facts and truth, it's because the facts and truth don't make you look good, and that's what I think we're seeing happen here. Um, we talk about election deniers and all of that. These are fact deniers regarding a tragic murder. This committee or working group that the subject was appointed to. Look, there's no evidence yet that I've seen, and I caveat that I've seen, and I've seen reports on this, that he ever actually met the governor. We're not even certain of that.
Right.
Now, the governor may have come in and said hello to the group, but the group had something to do with, I think, promoting business environment and post-COVID business, and somebody got him on this panel or working committee. That means absolutely nothing. And as you said,
Right. The governor before had him. Actually, Governor Dayton, who's a Democrat, had originally appointed him
yeah,
as a nonpartisan commission. And then Tim Walz reappointed him. So he had to reappoint him, but he reappointed him. And there was an interesting article I saw today that in Minnesota, there's over 100 nonpartisan boards, advisory committees, and all this stuff. So there's no connection to it. But even if he was, Walz appointed him 6 years ago. Something happened between
yes,
then and now
yes.
that got him to want to target Democrats. And on the right, they're just lying about this. I mean, when you look, there's lies political. There's one thing, but when you're lying about something that deals with deadly violence, it's a different level of a crime to me, like a moral crime. That we lived through January 6th, and Donald Trump, he celebrated the attackers as patriots. Literally called them the attackers patriots. He's called Ashley Babbitt's mom, who was killed attacking the Capitol, but he won't call the governor Walz of Minnesota. I mean, this is 2 + 2 = 4. If the violence on behalf of Trump, it's fine, and he'll celebrate it or defend you. And if it's uncomfortable, he'll ignore it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about us.
I think the far right particularly is convinced that their following believes everything they say, and it gets echoed in far right news platforms and social media. They know that it works very effectively. You have to give them that. So if you put something out like that, it's going to echo around enough that people will believe it. And if you ask somebody at the barber shop on the corner, hey, who was this guy? And all they're doing is checking far right media sources, they're going to go, yeah, I think it was a Democrat. That's how that works. But we got to stop it. I see no end in sight. And you're right to make a distinction between far left responses to violence and far right responses to violence, like pardoning those who are violent. That
Mm-hmm.
that that caps it all off.
And I'm talking with Frank Figliuzzi, if a Democratic leaders did not denounce violence and winked at it that it was okay, or incited and then pardoned terrorists who attacked the Capitol or committed violence on behalf of a Democratic cause, I would not be a Democrat anymore. I would say this is not the party I want to be a part. And I'm a Democrat. I don't hide that. That's what I am. But I would not want to be a part of it. Democrats, at least, not at least, they do the responsible thing. Tim Walz yesterday and I played the clip earlier, so like a minute and a half. There's no place for this in America. We can't allow this to be normal. That we have to come together on this, and we have to, with one voice, Democrat and Republican, denounce the violence. But if Republicans won't even acknowledge it's coming from their side, look at January 6th. How many of them, they even called my show, oh, it was an FBI agent. What's his name? Ray Epps. God, I'm like, so Ray Epps got 100,000 people to get the Capitol, and 1,000 Ray Epps, did he have a bullhorn? How did he get the 1,000 in? They would call in, and I would tell them, how did he get the 1,000 in? Like, how did they know him? He said, get in there, or the cops opened the door. So they opened one door. What about the guys who broke the window? Who told them to do that? Nothing makes sense, and we're dealing with that kind of difficulty. It doesn't make sense.
You can't put that back in the bottle. That Ray Epps thing, I thought, has been put to rest sufficiently,
Nope.
but it'll just keep
Nope.
bouncing back. And think back to the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband in San Francisco and what we went
Yep.
there, the joking that went on after that.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on a par with that I can see on the far left. And by the way, I know you and I if we see it, we denounce that. So,
Of
violence. So, for
course.
example, violence that on a very small level that's occurred in the Los Angeles area with regard to these riots, smashing police cars and stuff. No, don't do it. Committing arson at Tesla dealerships. I've come out and said, no, I hate to say this, but Pam Bondi's right. That is domestic terror. Stop that. It doesn't make anyone look good when you do that. It's
Nope.
not, it's really
Right.
bad.
I agree 100%. And that's part of it. So Frank, when you look, by the way, Minnesota does have a state terrorism statute. I was looking at that. It's similar to the federal definition. We don't have a federal. This doesn't make sense to people, but it's the truth. We have a definition of domestic terrorism under federal law. We don't have a penalty for it. There's no penalty for it. There's no crime for it. Just a definition. But certain states, New York, Luigi Mangione was charged with terrorism here. This guy, he might be charged with terrorism because in their statutes, like premeditated and assassination of elected officials is part of it. It seems like that would apply. I don't know what more evidence they're going to need. We'll see how it plays out. But, there was an article in the New York Times, an op-ed by Robert Pape. He's a professor from University of Chicago. I had him on before. And his concerns, and he goes, what we need are Democratic and Republican leaders to come out together in one voice. Because it's not enough that Republicans, and he's being very fair, they put out the statement that sounds good, but you don't hear the passion behind it. You need Democratic and Republican leaders together to say it to the camera where you can see their face and assess them that they're being sincere and honest. Would that be helpful as someone who studies radicalization like yourself? Would that help?
I'm glad you mentioned that because in my own FBI career, I have made that happen and seen it happen, and it does work. After terror attacks, getting all faiths together, for example, and roundly condemning it in unison, in person, at the same time actually works. And so while we may have seen the White House issue a statement, I saw Senator John Thune issued a decent statement. Get on the ground or get in DC, call a press conference, bipartisan, and condemn it. And I'm just not seeing that happen. And it does work. I've seen it work.
And that's that lack of enthusiasm to denounce the killing of literally killing of Democrats. And the games after January 6th where Ted Cruz called the attack terrorism at one point and had to walk it back because he got so much garbage from other senators. This is years ago. You may recall that happening. And other Republicans playing all these games, inside job, we're going to find out the truth. And remember, Mike Johnson, the speaker, was going to give all that footage of January 6th. Was going to show that it was an inside FBI job. No footage. It was what was released was meaningless. And no one even talks about it now. Because they're like, we don't have anything. We know they knew they didn't have it. It was a game, but it's a dangerous game. It's a truly a very dangerous game. So let me ask you, we saw last week, Senator Padilla, the U.S. Senator from California, asked Kristi Noem a question and was assaulted by officers. I mean, he was taken down and then they let him go. Today, Brad Lander, the New York City comptroller who's running for mayor, was in the hall. We see it on camera. He goes, I want to see an arrest warrant. And they grab him. They charge because they said, if you don't stop, we're going to arrest you. And he goes, I want to see an arrest warrant. He didn't assault anyone. They released him now. They're not charging him. They've dropped all the charges. But at first, DHS says he assaulted officers. We see that on our face. He's not assaulting officers. Does this kind of action by this heavy-handed reaction by the Trump regime, could it result in, I'm not justifying it, I'm just saying it's human nature, what you've seen, could it result in some people on the left responding in violence, going, look, I've had enough of this. We're just not going to take it anymore.
I'm deeply concerned that this kind of deliberate strategy to be heavy-handed like this with the masks on the face and no identifying insignia many times on these so-called arrests, I think it's going to stoke a lot of anger and passion in people. It is a recipe for violence. Will I condemn the violence when it happens? Yes, but if I were to ever be asked marketing opinions, and it won't ever happen, by DHS, I would tell them they're doing the exact opposite of winning the public over. What the public who voted for Trump wanted to see, and by the way, many people who didn't vote for Trump were okay with taking violent criminals and who are here unlawfully and getting them out of the country. Do it. But what the data is showing us is something, last time I looked, something like 10% of the arrests made by ICE involved violent criminals. So we're not there. Instead, we're in this thuggery. And by the way, and if I sound incensed at this mask thing is really troubling. The only time in my FBI career where I saw mask used on arrest scenarios was if it involved an undercover agent, right, who now had to lay hands on the subject or be the affiant in the arrest warrant. That's it. If you're embarrassed by what you're doing, then don't do it. But if you have to wear a full face mask, And then what's the deal with no identifiable insignia? You don't want your agency to be identified? And you talk about the potential for violence. Look, remember this horrible weekend, the police told people in Minnesota, if you have a police officer at your door, call 911 and ask if that's a real police officer at your door, right? But what are we being asked to do with regard to ICE agents and other federal agents making arrests? Oh, just believe that the guy in a full face mask with no ID, just believe he's a federal agent. No, or you're going to get arrested. No. And that's what we saw happen in New York, with somebody saying, do you have a judicial warrant or not? Who are you? What's your agency? And, it really hurt. Again, this is personal for me. The Los Angeles Federal Building, where Kristi Noem was speaking and Padilla was forced out and down to the ground. The two of the officers who forced him down were wearing FBI patches on a uniform, and those are FBI police. A lot of people don't know that larger field offices and headquarters certainly have what are called FBI police department, right? They're not special agents.
Oh, I know that.
They're police officers, just like the Secret Service has a uniform division. This is somewhat
okay.
So I first saw that and I was asking people, where is this? Where is this? Why are FBI police there? And it turns out it was indeed the FBI office in Los Angeles. So I get that, but it hurt to see FBI police officers wrestling a senator to the ground. Unbelievable.
I imagine. And look, people cover their face and don't have insignias or their nameplate. They don't want to be held accountable. It's not about doxing. The police, every day in New York City, I don't see any police officer with a mask on their face unless it's a riot gear. And their name's there. And if they do something wrong, they understand they're going to be held accountable. If you think you're above the law, you act a different way. So I have to let you go, Frank, because we have to squeeze in some breaks before the top of the hour. Follow Frank. Where's the best place to follow you in the last 30 seconds here?
Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and my website, frankfigliuzzi.com.